Welcome to another episode of Around the Community, a podcast brought to you by Card Talk, where we spend a little bit of time talking about all the awesome content that's been created for the Lord of the Rings card game by Fantasy Flight Games. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
Always along for the ride, Grant. So, Grant, we have to start this episode off with discussing our popularity. So it's been an ongoing gag here that we've been wanting a new name for the show.
Well, get it right here. I've been wanting a new name for the show.
Yeah, you've been dying to have a new name for the show. So I kind of like Around the Community, but we always put it over to the listeners, to you guys, and we said, come up with a new name, and we'll talk about it. We'll see if we like it. And so for a long time, nobody emailed, which means that I was the popular guy. But this last episode, the one that we put out for April, for reviewing what happened in April, we actually got some feedback. And so I think, Grant, and right, we're actually gonna pull the trigger on this. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, so we are announcing that we're changing the name of the podcast. We're not changing the time that it's being released or the content or anything, but a guy by the name of Cody, who emailed the show, he is actually the guy who does Flying Solo. He's doing he does a lot of gameplay, but he's doing a progression style playthrough. More on him later. But Cody said, "Why don't you guys call the show Community Tales?" Which is a play on the card Campfire Tales, which you can see right here. I'll put it up on the screen, and then and so basically we're talking about all the tales from the community that we've taken. And I really liked it. I loved the shout out to a card. I loved the what it meant and what it symbolizes. And Grant, what did you think when you heard of this?
I liked it. It's short, it's to the point, and it's not a mouthful of words.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, you're going to like anything that's not Around the Community by Card Talk. So from henceforth, whenever we talk about the show, we're going to talk about it as Community Tales. So Cody, thank you so much. Shout out to you and your podcast, or not podcast, but your playthroughs on YouTube. Again, we'll talk a little bit about that in the future, and I think it's really cool. So Grant, let's talk a little bit. What's been going on with you? You and I, we haven't talked much in May. We recorded some shows, but that was about it. What's been going on with you?
Sorting stuff out at work. Doing stuff
it's like everybody's.
Doing stuff with the kids. D&D down at the youth club with them, and then doing stuff within the community with other content creators, some stuff that we'll talk about later for our show that I've been helping to create content for, and just overall, just life.
Yeah. This is so. Most of the people know that I'm a teacher, and I teach in the Northeast of the United States, and so like the last month of teaching is always really tough for teachers. There's a million like award shows. You got to get your room cleaned up. You got to do a million things to finish up the year on top of your normal teaching duties and finishing off the year, testing and all these things. So this is where I get bogged down with all my junk. And so I say the Northeast United States because a lot of people in the South of the United States, they get done by the end of May or the middle of May. The Northeast of the United States usually goes until the middle of June. So I am deep in the middle of finishing out the year, and my wife is a teacher as well, and my kids are in school, so this month is always really tough to get stuff done. and not just podcast related, but just life related. So, if there's any teachers out there, which there's a whole mess of teachers in the community, but if there's any teachers out there that know how to make life easier in the last month of school, let me know. cardtalk2018@gmail.com. Or just put a message down below. But nonetheless, this is the month of May, and the month of May is, I guess, famous around the world, right? Because there's May the 4th, right? And I always add the Revenge of the 5th, which is the famous Star Wars thing, right? May the 4th be with you. And it was really funny.
I'm just face palming right now.
Yeah. So this is why I'm glad you don't have video feed, because you're. But nonetheless, it's funny that on the 4th of May, somebody published a deck. The link will be down below, but it's called Not the Droids You're Looking For, and the write-up was hysterical. It was all about how there's, the droids, and these aren't the things that you are going to want to see. I don't know. Take a look. Check it out. It's definitely really... it's funny. It's worth the check if you're at all a Star Wars person, and if there's any overlap in Star Wars and in your love for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. This is something good to have there.
I actually quite like this deck.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it.
Right. And so go ahead, click it, and it's on RingsDB, and it's the write-up is pretty good and things like that. So it's good. I thought that was a great way to kick off May and the content that's been created. Of course, RingsDB has 1 million decks. Not 1 million, actually. They just hit 10,000 a couple months ago. But they have a ton of different decks that people are playing. It's getting added to every year, every day. So you can always get your fix of content for net decking right there. But that leads us to our next little segment that I wanted to do. And so one of the things that I've always wanted the community to do or to know is what we are doing in the game. We put out this little podcast, but Grant and I love the game and we play it a lot. So Grant, what's your new hotness in terms of decks you're playing? What kind of decks you're playing?
I've been playing a few decks, but one of the main decks that I go to is a combat beta. It's called the Power of Grimbeorn.
Oh, you and your Grimbeorn deck. Ugh.
Yep.
It's actually really good.
It is. Uses Theodred and Hiagon as backup to do a little bit of questing, but to keep out some allies after the quest phase. But it just demolishes quests.
That's cool. Is there any particular scenarios that you've been playing with that deck?
Scenarios I've played: Cross the Etten Moors, The Treachery of Rudar, and Journey Along the Anduin Nightmare.
Journey Along the Anduin Nightmare. That 10 threat location.
Yeah, this deck is definitely not one to be paired solo because it just does not have the questing potential, but it has the combat potential.
It's good. You know what I've been playing? I've been playing a dwarf mining deck, and that dwarf mining deck is a lot of fun. So, but I've been using not Dain, not the old Dain, but I've been using new Dain, and that has been a lot of fun, along with the Ring of Thror. And I use Gandalf and Glowing with that, and I'm having a lot of fun with that deck. The problem is that deck starts with 34 threat, and you know how I feel about high threat. But I've been playing some scenarios where when I beat them, I actually end up with threat lower than my starting threat because I can, you're recycling your deck a lot with Will of the West and things like that. So I end up with an ending threat for the game for that particular game, like 28 or 27 or something like that. So I'm able to do that, and so that's been a lot of fun. That deck is actually posted on RingsDB, and I think it's called the Dain and the Discard, and so you can check that out, and it's under the Card Talk name. but those are my decks that I'm publishing. Scenarios, you know what I've been playing a lot of lately? I've been playing a lot of Journey Along the Anduin. I just find that it's a really good deck, really good scenario to test. So any new players out there or any people looking for a scenario to test, Journey Along the Anduin is really the good deck testing scenario. I've also...
Yeah, it needs early combat potential and quest power to beat along the Anduin, and having that early, being able to tangle with the hill troll in some way, or being able to mitigate threat completely from some of the higher threat locations like the Brown Lands or whatever you've got coming out. It's just an all-round beast of a quest. Hence why I do it on Nightmare, because it adds in like the Gladden Marshland, which is a 10 threat location.
Right. It's just a really good scenario, and it's really stood the test of time over 8 years of gameplay and that sort of stuff. It's just really good. I've also, for those people who don't know, I'm going to Con of the Rings this year, and I've been brushing up on my Angmar Awakens scenarios. And then, so I'm going to spend a couple of months playing those scenarios and making sure that I remember how to play those. And then after that, I'm going to spend a couple of months playing the Storm Chaser, the Grey Havens box, and what's the name of the cycle? Why am I blanking on this cycle?
Dream Chaser cycle?
Dream Chaser, that's it. Storm Chaser. What am I? That's like I'm a I don't know.
Riders on the Storm.
Right. So, anyways, so I've been doing a lot of that, and I want to get ready for Con of the Rings. It's going to be a lot of fun. And if you're looking for some information about Con of the Rings, Grant and I and John, Peace and Thought, one of the organizers of Con of the Rings, recorded an episode. You can go back. It's also posted on their website, conoftheringsmn.com. So, anyways, Con of the Rings is coming up in October. I can't wait to see everybody there. And
unfortunately, I will not be joining you.
Maybe we can join digitally, which would be a lot of fun.
If we can sort out that, then I will definitely be up for it.
We'll sort it out just for you. So, and so something kind of, this is where we kind of usually transition from what we do to what other creators have done. And this is where Grant and I wanted to take a moment to talk about a podcast that actually is really near and dear to our hearts. And it's not that they had to end the podcast. It's just that they chose to. And so the Grey Company aired their last podcast this month, finishing up the book club that they started a couple years ago. And they really were one of the gold standards for podcasting. They actually, one of the episodes they put out was episode 15.5, where they spoiled a card and they talked about it for 10 or 15 minutes, which, if you're interested, that's similar to what we do. And so, and it's funny because I didn't necessarily know that they did it, but when I found out that they did it after I had started Card Talk, I was like, this is exactly how I want the show to be. You have people talking about cards that they love. And they were spoiling cards, so they didn't necessarily had it to play, but, they did a lot of good stuff. And so as a content creator, I put out a call for anybody who wanted to say something to the Grey Company. And so it's interesting. I got a million responses. There was, went through, OK Targ, who I don't know who OK Targ is, but I assume that Dan and Matthew and Derek and Ian know who OK Targ is, and then Gandalf DK, Rob T. There's just a whole bunch of people, and every single person. I don't want to necessarily read all the responses I got, But I wanted to just say that overwhelmingly, they said that just really great content. And so great company. I don't normally speak for Grant, but I will in this case and say that, you will be missed, and what you do and what you've done for the community has been an amazing thing. So I'm just gonna read one person's submission from the form. So give me a minute to just to thank, because this summarizes everything. And so this was written by Gandalf DK, who is in the Discord server. I don't know Gandalf DK personally, but you can tell that this encapsulates everything that all the people were saying. It says, "Thank you, Greyco. Thank you for all the thoughtful opinions on lore, cards, and life. Thank you for all the moments where Derek has to pull the story together because of the tangency stuff you go on. Thank you, Matthew, for being the Melkor of the show. Your Sauron's advocate has made me think about things I wouldn't normally think of and made me laugh many times. Thank you, Dan, for being the bear in hibernation, the one who has thought about stuff a lot and is able to explain his thoughts so very explicitly. Made me understand many a thing clearly that I otherwise would not have. Thank you, Derek, for being the steady rock in my storming river. You are always able to keep the ship on course, make sense of the ranting company, and summarize it for all the listeners. Really helpful skill and most appreciated. For me, you always represented the casual player really well, doing some stuff that can be easily oversighted by more experienced players. And thank you, Ian, for being the Saruman to Beorn's Treebeard, both wise, but you could always present a different view really well and present it to the listeners. I really like the offset and variation from that. Thank you all for bringing well-thought and awesome LOTR LCG content. My favorite stuff from you guys is the book club, and I think you guys should be proud of it all. I hope to see more of you, and I wish I saw more of you in the community. The ripples you put out will always stir the pool. Hope to see you in person one day. Kind regards, Gandalf DK. And I think that just embodies what the show is all about. So, great company. I hope that your ship to Valinor finds its way, and if anytime any of you want to come on the show, you're more than welcome to come on the show and talk about anything that you want. It doesn't have to be a card. It doesn't have to be anything. Just come on the show.
We salute you for your service.
Right. So, okay. So that's our little tribute to the great company and what they have done for us. But our own show next month is going to be a little interesting. So, I don't know. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up next month, specifically? Who our guest is going to be?
Yeah. If you remember, a little while ago, we had a competition for somebody to come onto the show and set us straight, and that was Ted, and he set us straight on Gandalf, the hero, and we've got some playthroughs coming out with him, and we also did we've also got another episode on Shadowfax coming out, and boy was Ted's episode an eye-opener for
yeah. And so for the community, I don't know if you guys remember, but Ted was on episode, I think he looked it up on the show. I think he's episode 71 on Cardboard of the Rings, and it was called Bike Spokes. And so this was first age Cardboard of the Rings, where they brought him on the show, and he said there's always a place for every card in the game. It may be very small, but that place is always there. So Ted is going to come on and talk about Gandalf, and it's going to be awesome, right? Well, you guys did a couple of playthroughs too, right? How did those go?
We had one victory and one loss.
So you played Entenmoors and Rudar, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'm going to guess. I haven't seen the playthroughs yet, so they're going to be released next month. So I would guess that Ettenmoors was the win and Rudar was the loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was such a close.
Oh, really?
So close
it was
to
a
being
nail
a
biter.
victory.
Yeah.
Oh, very much so. I mean, we had a rough beginning in Rudar, but we managed to pull it out. But it just wasn't quite there to get the win. But it was so fun. It was definitely one of those games that was like you're on the edge of your seat for the next card to come out.
Those are the best games to play, whether you win or lose. Those are the most fun to be a part of.
Oh, definitely. And me and Ted have had some great fun doing these Set Us Straight episodes.
That's good. And he actually inspired me to get back to playing Gandalf in my dwarf mining deck. So, I mean, it's funny how it all kind of comes back around. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's going to come up for us in June. And that'll be a lot of fun. Other content creators, I wanted to spend a minute talking about Three's Company with our friend Joseph, and then Mr. Underhill Ryan, and then Liam. I want to, in some ways, set out an apology, but I think in the last episode I made it sound like it's hard to listen to them because it's a long episode, and I want to give everybody in the community that when you listen to Three's Company, it is super entertaining and it's awesome. The amount of content that they shove into those episodes is really good, but it is a long form podcast. But there's not a bad section of it. And so episode 2 was great. It took the whole Haradrim cycle and talked about all the quests and gave like some hints on all the quests. And it talked about like the story behind each scenario, and all of them did a really good job talking about it. And what they do there is really great. It's probably the podcast that's the most focused on the content.
Definitely. It doesn't seem to get sidetracked as much as other podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, right, and it's also like it also gives you that long form 2.5 hours of just content. You know, like here's the content, here it is, and they have funny stories about their playthroughs that they play because they play all the time. And Ryan and Joseph put out playthroughs all the time, and you know, so that's good. And so they put out not only the second episode, which I listened to. Don't tell them, but I listened to it a couple of times because it was so good. But then they put out the third one recently, and I haven't yet gotten a chance to listen to it. Again, teacher end of the year sort of stuff. But this one is about Fire in the Night and the Power of Dale. So, or that's the episode title. So I can only imagine that we're going to be talking deck construction with Dale, and hopefully some player card reviews and maybe a scenario analysis of Fire in the Night. And that is exciting for me because this new cycle, the Arid Mithrin cycle, is the one that is for me probably the best cycle in a long time. So I'm really excited about it. So COTR, I know that you don't get a chance to listen to COTR too much, Cardboard of the Rings, but they're the original and the best place for the community to get together because they just basically everything that happens in the community happens probably because something that COTR did at one point. So it's kind of funny, you know, like people meet up and meet together, and even Con of the Rings, I think, was probably those guys were brought together because something that Cardboard of the Rings did. So they're good. But I don't need to say that every time that how influential they are. But nonetheless, they actually recorded 2 episodes in May, but I think the second episode that was supposed to be released isn't going to be released until the next time we do this. So there's actually one episode in May that I get to talk about. And they talked about the best and the worst cards of the Heirs of Numenor cycle. So it was nice to hear those guys talk about some non-news stuff and talk about some content. And it was a lot of content. So they were talking a lot about cards and a lot about those things. And, you know, those are the shows that I really enjoy because to hear opinions that aren't my own about cards is really exciting for me. And one of the reasons why I wanted to make this podcast. And without dominating the whole podcasting section of the show notes, Grant, there's but I still will. And then there's a new podcast out by Will Lentz, and I think he is the originator of the White Book podcast. And so he put it out, and it's a short form podcast. And there's only been one episode, but it's called Elevenses. And I listened to the first one, and it's really good, or at least it's seeming to be really good. But I like the short form. Obviously, I'm a fan of the short form because that's what our podcast is. So it'll be nice to have another short form podcast out there focused on some of this stuff. And Will apparently has been around the community for a while. One of my projects that I wanted to do was listen to all the back episodes of COTR, Cardboard of the Rings, and the White Book has been on COTR for a while now. Brandon kept calling it the White Pages, and everybody used to get really mad at him for calling it the White Pages. But the White Book has been around for a while, so this is Will's attempt at getting more specific about maybe Lord of the Rings content, and that'll be good. Whew. How about that? Okay, so that covers all the podcasts that have been going around. But Grant, I don't want to leave you out of anything. First of all, do you have anything to say about the podcast that I just listed? And then second of all, do you want to talk about your friend Samuel?
No, not so much on the podcast side of things. I think you've covered everything. As for Samuel, he's recently posted Passage of the Marshes, his campaign he's doing with
Ecthalion, right?
Ecthalion, yeah. Right. Had a mind blank there.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
And they've got through to the Passage of the Marshes.
And he's taken Lorfindel walks to Mordor, right? Isn't he taking his Lorfindel deck?
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
And it's amazing to see how much they've decided to do with just like, we are keeping Lorfindel in the deck, and he's going all the way to Mordor.
Right. One does not simply walk to Mordor, right?
No, they just get on a white horse and ride.
Right.
But no, it's always good to see what he's always puts out some great content. And then we have another episode from the Warden of Arnor. City of the Corsairs has come out, which is, I believe, the last
Storm on Kobus. Oh, City of Corsairs is the last and most recent one. Yeah, and he did Storm on Kobus Haven before that. Yeah. He's all ready for Con of the Rings. I say that because Con of the Rings, they're going to do their epic playthroughs. They're going to do the Angmar Awakens cycle and the Dream Chaser cycle all together. So there's going to be 18 plus Siege of Numenor. So that's 19 scenarios they're going to play in 3 days. So that's why I keep bringing that up. So it looks like the Warden is going to be well ready for I'm
not sure, is the Warden actually going to
I don't know if he is or not. Is he from England or from Britain?
Yeah, he's from not far from me. So.
Right. So I don't know if he's on the international guest registry for the thing. So it's something worth looking into, but
as I was about to say, they are the last two adventure packs in the Dream Chaser cycle.
Right.
A podcast, progression series that I'm not so familiar with, Flying Solo.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this guy. So this guy is Cody. This is Cody G. Yeah. He's the one who sent in for Community Tales, the name of the show. So, and and so we've been emailing. He actually is from China, or he's living in China. I don't know. if he's a natural born citizen of China or if he's like an expat of another country. But nonetheless, he is in China and he's doing playthroughs. He's doing a progression solo playthrough. And so he emailed me, and his stuff looks pretty good. He does play other games other than LOTR, and I think his most recent part of the progression is the 7th level. And so the 7th level is the first or second scenario in the Casa Doom box. What do we got? Do you know?
Sorry, I got a message off my partner. What did you say there, mate?
Listen. No, I said that he got up to the 7th level. Is that the first or second scenario in the Casa Doom box?
That's the second.
Okay, so he got up to he's up to there. So, and he's got some good stuff, and I actually like his camera work. He has one camera on like the quest card and the decks, and then he's got another card on his staging area and stuff. And so I'm going to try to emulate a little bit of that, hopefully, at some point. So, Cody, keep up the good work there, flying solo.
For blogs, I haven't really scoured much blog scene with being busy with work and kids, but two blogs stood out for us this month, which was the storage solutions, which I believe you helped with, David.
Hey, well, so Durin's father, Vision of the Palantir brainchild, he has contributors talk about storage solutions or about anything about the game. So I'm a semi irregular contributor there, and so I ended up writing about how I store the game. So I will I'll put a link to the storage solutions down below, and right here you can see how I store the game. And it was kind of written because I order those neat boxes to store my encounter cards in, but people can click on the link and see what's going on with him.
Yep. And then another one was Samuel again with his White Tower blog put out his next experimental deck building blog, which was the first deck of the Wilderlands United Ties of Blood and Friendship, which I am also contributing on. Not so much the blog format, but the testing of the decks. Me and my partner play with the other two decks, and then he runs the Ties of Blood and Friendship. So it's interesting. It's a good read, and the playthroughs are generally all right. Sometimes the encounter deck makes us sweat a little bit of bullets, but generally speaking, we'll have a good time playing.
Yeah, and so I looked at LOTR deck testing. So that's Joseph's blog. He takes a deck every once in a while and just tests it. And he hasn't put anything out in about a month, but he's also busy with the Three's Company podcast, and so. But he has some good stuff. If you ever need to see how a deck behaves, or if you're looking for ideas that are a little more focused, I suggest going to lotrdecktest.wordpress.com to check out Joseph's deck. I think that he does a good job over there.
Yeah, he definitely does.
Yeah, he did look at the Slippery Sylvans for us, so that was good. But yeah, so I think that's also with Vision of the Palantir, I didn't want to leave out. Dan is going to be real busy. Durin's father is going to be really busy with some of the stuff, so he's got a couple of guest sections going on. So there's a couple of people doing some guest writing for him, and I've been reading that stuff, and I would suggest anybody who's interested in the game to check out what those guests have been writing. There's been some playthrough stuff that's coming out, and some quest analyses that have been coming out. So it's going to be a lot of stuff there being put out.
So are you going to guest writing for him again?
I don't have anything on the horizon. At some point, I need to write not the third scenario in the Hobbit box, but then the fourth scenario. So the
Flies and Spiders.
So that's I took it on myself to kind of do that, but somebody took the third one in the box, which is fine by me because that's my least favorite of the Hobbit campaigns.
The Battle of Five Armies.
No, the riddles in the dark, where you have to.
Riddles in the dark. Yes.
Yeah, you have to do guess the first letter of the. I don't know, whatever it is. It's that's my least favorite, so I'm glad I didn't have to write that up. But so at some point I'm going to have to give Dan his his Flies and Spiders one, and then the Battle of Five Armies. There's one in between there.
There's the one where you're at the Lonely Mountain.
Where you're trying to burgle stuff.
Yeah.
The burgle quest. But then the Battle of Five Armies is really good. I really enjoy playing the Battle of Five Armies.
It's good when you've got a good deck, but if you're just throwing a deck together, it can really be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
From experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I played the scenario with the whole campaign with my Slippery Sylvan deck, and I had a lot of fun playing it. I couldn't burgle much of the treasures, but I don't know, whatever. Doesn't matter. So does that wrap it up? Is that what we got going on here?
Yeah, I believe that's everything.
Well, let's put it out there. If anybody wants us to mention something that they're doing, we're not trying to be exclusive here. We're just going down through the things that interest us and things that we listen to and read about and watch in our spare time when we're playing the game. So feel free to submit your content to us and let us know it exists, and we'd be happy to mention it and talk about it and look at it. And we're equal opportunity here. So it's easy to talk about Cardboard of the Rings because everybody kind of knows about Cardboard of the Rings, but there's other just equally as valid content out there that sometimes we just don't get a chance to get to. So send your emails to cardboardoftherings.com. Yeah. Right. If you want your content reviewed, send it to cardboardoftherings@gmail.com and let Chad and John. I think Chad's in charge of their email address. Let them review it. We don't want it. No. I can just see Chad why are we getting all these emails? What? I was like, take a look.
Where's it all coming from?
Yeah, where's it coming? Oh, okay. Sorry, Chad. Sorry, guys. So send something to cardtalk2018@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to take a look and see what's going on with that. So there it is. And is there anything that you have to add?
No, just the regular places to find us: YouTube, Facebook, and our podcast feed URL are the usuals.
Right.
Where you can get one.
Okie doke. So everybody have a great day. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username CardTalk2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at CardTalk2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.